Here's one of the coolest things about Gator 1.0. There's two things that typical wholesalers don't have. Number one, earnest money.
Yep.
Number two, buyers.
Yep.
Because they're so hell-bent on focusing on finding sellers and getting contracts. Okay, so when we talk about Gator 1.0, Gator 1.0 is joint venturing on people's EMD deposits. What's my security? Anybody have questions that we could deviate to the side comments for a second? Everybody's like, no, Pace, you've covered this 1,000 times. All right, awesome. So it's good for a refresher. Everybody understands this. This is perfect. So what happens is the wholesaler now still makes their money, right? They still make their, after the transaction's done, let's say I get my $1,000 back out of this, plus I make $3,000. So I walk away with $4,000 out of that transaction with $3,000 of profit. Mm-hmm. The wholesaler makes his $12,000 and he kept the relationship, he kept the deal, all that kind of stuff intact, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay. Here's one of the coolest things about Gator 1.0. There's two things that typical wholesalers don't have. Number one, earnest money.
Yep.
Number two, buyers.
Yep.
Because they're so hell-bent on focusing on finding sellers and getting contracts that then they get a contract and they go, oh my gosh, I actually got a contract.
What do I do now?
What do I do now? Yep. And now they're like, I don't have a buyer, but I have a 10-day inspection period. So very smart Gators build a business that's not just about bringing money to the transaction. They actually go and find the buyer and they work out a deal where they have additional agreements. So for me, in my first month of doing this, when I made my 40 grand, I was making money off of helping them find buyers.
Yep.
So it was a really great way to build trust with the wholesaler and saying, hey, if you don't have a buyer yet, let me cover the EMD and let me go help you find a buyer and we can just JV on the deal. I'll take 50% of the deal.
Right.
So now I'm leveraging myself into somebody else's deal. Yep. Now, I wasn't smart enough at this time. I was using my own cash.
Gotcha. I
was using my own money. And then I had so many of these going on. I had like 30 of these going on at any given time. And I was doing them in other states as well, because at that point I had ventured into like Atlanta and North Carolina.
Nice.
It became a problem for me and my cash flow. I'm like, I need access to capital.
Right.
Okay, so what was my first step? My first step actually should have been Gator 0.0, which is Gator wrestling. So if I don't have a line of credit, I don't have capital, what I did is I said, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a Gator community where people who do have lines of credit or people that have been in the community for a significant amount of time. Guys, in the comments, how many of you guys have got credit cards, lines of credit, trade lines from being in Gator? Okay, so you'll see hundreds of people that will say, I have access to capital because that's what we built in Gator. We built the ability for you to come in. Let's say you're brand new to Gator today on day one. What you're going to get inside of Gator, and you're going to hear this a lot inside of the Gator community, people are like, oh, I'm waiting for my first line of credit. I'm waiting for my this. I'm waiting for my that. So I can do my Gator 1.0 transactions.
Right.
That's no excuse for them not to be doing transactions. They should just be going in and finding the more seasoned Gators and saying, hey, Gator who's been inside of the community for 6 months, who obviously has lines of credit, I found a wholesaler that needs us to fund $1,000. Okay? So Gator 0 or Gator wrestling is a very beginning stage of, I just came into Gator and I don't have a line of credit yet. And they're going, and by the way, just so you know, I haven't told you this yet, but I had a conversation with PCS today. I'm going to create a new LLC. And I'm going to have you, Jade, I'm sorry to do this to you, I'm going to have you go and build corporate credit for that LLC.
Oh, awesome.
So as you're doing transaction coordination and as you're doing this stuff, you can speak intelligently to the community as well, just as somebody who's built corporate credit for our lending side of things.
Absolutely. That's
Sound
awesome.
good?
Yeah.
Cool. Because there's going to be people that will have questions about the paperwork and the Dun and Bradstreet thing and the da-da-da-da-da, and because you're going to be so tied into the transaction coordination. Okay, so you've got a lot of people right here that are like, I just gap funded a Gators EMD. Gap funding is a different strategy. Yep. It's one of the other Gator strategies. It's not Gator 0 or Gator 1.
Nope.
Okay, so we understand what Gator 0 is.
Yep.
Any questions about paperwork? Any questions about how do I protect myself? Any questions about Houston? Here's a big one. If I go to Texas, I go to Utah, I go to other states, there's a very, 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 very important thing that we have to do when we're doing paperwork. Okay, and here's what you have to do. If I'm working with a title company, you're my transaction coordinator.
Okay.
And I say, hey, Jade, I've got a deal that we're going to joint venture. $3,000 of EMDs coming out of our line of credit. and we're going to get $5,000 back in return in the next 10 days. What I want you to do is step number one, go, what paperwork was used to sign the contract with the seller? Why? Because a lot of times, as you know, agents are smarter than wholesalers.
For sure.
And an agent's going to go, I'm going to try and do a non-refundable earnest money, or I'm going to try and do a no inspection on the house because they said it's as is. And so I'm going to make the inspection really short. I'm going to make it so the EMD gets released even if they cancel on the deal. So step number one, before we deploy our capital into the deal, is we need to
Look at the contract.
There you go. Look at the contract. Now, we have rules inside of Gator. I've already trained on this. We have deep training of like, here's the 20 steps. We're not going to go through all of that today. But look at the contract. Make sure that the contract, number one, states that there's an inspection period and that if I cancel, I get my inspection money, or I get my earnest money back.
Yes.
Okay? If I get engaged to your daughter and we cancel this arrangement, we cancel this marriage, I want my freaking ring pop back.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Heck yeah.
The freaking thing was grape. I'm not letting a grape ring pop go. Okay? I need to make sure that that's an understanding, because title companies can be fickle about this, as you've known.
Yes.
Of like, no, we're releasing this to the seller. Hold on a second. It says in the inspection period that if I release, or I'm sorry, if we cancel during the inspection period, I get my earnest money back.
Yes. So you want to not only make sure it's in the contract, but that title understands the contract.
Oh my gosh, this is the problem with you. You're so smart. You've been doing this for so long, and this is why it's so great that you're in here, is because other people will look at my instructions and they don't understand how important that is. So I always tell people, call title and introduce yourself. And you want to tell them the relationship of who you are.
Yep.
Hey, my name is Pace Morby. I'm actually bringing the earnest money to the transaction, and I'm going to be joint venturing with the person who opened escrow. When you distribute the funds on the assignment fee, if you look at this JV agreement, this joint venture agreement, which obviously is a contract that's in Gator, we spent money with Sean St. Clair, our attorney, to draft all these documents.
Yep.
We've updated them 85 times as we've learned new things, and it's evolved into basically a perfect contract. Here's my joint venture agreement that states, it's kind of like commission instructions. Here's my commission instructions. When you distribute the $15,000 assignment fee to Joe Blow, I want to make sure that I get my $1,000 back plus my $3,000. He gets the other $12,000.
Yes.
You want to verify that, and then more importantly, you want them to reply in email that they understand.
Yes. So we actually call them, have the conversation, and then we open an email thread with both buyer, seller, everyone involved in the transaction and title.
Perfect.
Hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. Please leave all communication here. Reply
Right.
all.
And are we all on the same page? Are we all understanding what's going on?
I need to know this, this, and this. Please respond to these numbers respectively.
This is why having transaction coordinators in our community is so critically important, is because transaction coordinators are the organized people. How many people on the side, how many people are here? We have 400 people here today. How many people here are horrible at paperwork? Just say, hey dude, if you're horrible at paperwork. Jeff, I'm going to venture to say you're horrible at paperwork.
She handles all my paperwork.
100%. Isn't it funny how we find our equal and opposite, right? Do you actually enjoy the organized part of your job?
I actually love creating order and organization where chaos was previously.
So you were born for this.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So guys, do we understand why transaction coordinators exist? Jade is a transaction coordinator. I can go out and go get more deals. That's my job. My job is to go be a warrior, go out in the field and go get more deals. Your job is to make sure we take care of the castle.
Yep. Get it to the finish line.
Right. So a lot of times, if you think about it, the warrior leaves the castle, and if there's nobody to protect the castle, the estate falls to rubble, right?
Absolutely.
So you are in charge of the castle. You're in charge of the estate. You're in charge of the business. I'm running out and just trying to get more prisoners of war, essentially, more deals, right? So number one, look at the contract. Number two, call title and intro the relationship, reply an email, and make sure that they understand, which is what you do. Something that's very important to note for you and other people, because I know you have a lot of experience here in Arizona real estate, but in places like Texas and Utah, they have a mutual release state, which means the seller and the buyer have to both mutual decide on who gets the EMD.
Yes.
So what we do is we want to make sure that the seller or the agent signs a release. This is also paperwork we have inside of Gator that says the buyer, if they decide to cancel, This is now giving the seller is now giving us permission right now in the inspection period. I don't want to deal with that later.
Right. So we have a form within Gator that they fill out. We always clarify with the title company, do they have their own form that they require?
Gosh dang it. Have you watched the training, Jade?
I have purposely not watched your training.
Okay, perfect.
Because I wanted to
love
learn
it.
from.
I love it. Okay, but you know the documents.
I know the documents.
This is great. You know how many times people will skip over that training? That's, in my opinion, the most important part is saying, in fact, I had a wholesaler that not a wholesaler, but had a Gator that came into Gator community about a year ago, and he says, I'm about to lose $30,000 of EMD I put up on a $3 million deal. I go, okay, did you look at the contract? He goes, yes, I did. I go, okay, perfect. Did you call the title company and introduce yourself and tell them who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it? And he says, no, I did not. I go, so they have no clue. And did you verify that it's a mutual release date? And he goes, I did not. I go, so you skipped the training. He goes, the training's not there. I'm like, bro, it's right here. It's a 2-hour training. That whole entire thing on how to do that, the paperwork, et cetera, everything that's associated with it.
Yep.
And he goes back in there and he goes, yeah, you're right. I skipped over it. I skipped over the training. Perfect. And that's training I'll never put in, obviously, on YouTube. The contracts are not accessible. Like,
right.
All of that training is just inside. But I love that you know this. This is the problem. You're so smart. So number 3 is verify the release.
Yep.
What are the terms of the release? If I cancel during my inspection period, is the inspection period on Thanksgiving and nobody's in the office? So does that mean that if I just send an email on Thanksgiving Day and nobody's there to receive it, that I have technically canceled? Well, I don't know. I think that would be open to interpretation, right?
Sure.
I don't want anything open to interpretation. So this is what happened. He says, well, I did cancel. And I go, perfect. This is now coming on a year because now Thanksgiving's coming around, right?
For sure.
He says, I go, dude, what day did you cancel? Was it on a Saturday? He goes, well, it was actually on Thanksgiving. I'm like, you didn't look at your inspection period and what day it landed on? How did you know it didn't land on Saturday or Sunday when nobody's in the office? How do you know it didn't land on a holiday? He goes, we didn't even look. So we got to verify the release. We got to verify all this information. 1, this is why we have transaction coordinators doing this stuff. And 2, if you don't have a transaction coordinator because you're greedy and you want to make all the money, then at least make sure you do all of these things.
Right.
Okay?
And realize that all of these things take a ton of time.
They do take time because it's not like the title rep or the escrow officer just sitting there waiting for you to call them and they're available 100% of the time.
Nor are they always good about returning phone calls or emails.
They're busy.
Yeah.
And it's chaotic.
Yeah. You got to
Cool.
stay on top of them.
Okay, everybody learning a couple things? This transaction, wow, Molly has a flow chart you can follow now. Perfect, yeah, Josh Hobbs knows that, yeah.
It's amazing.
It
we
is
just talked
awesome.
about it on our call yesterday.
Perfect. So these are things that are not on YouTube, but I just want to make sure that we're doing a refresher and you and I are on the same page.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you guys went over this on the call yesterday inside of Gator?
We went through the flow chart. Molly has an amazing lucid chart that walks you through, like, if this is the transaction, this is the paperwork you need.
Perfect.
Once you have this paperwork, you go here. So it's amazing. If anyone
Guys,
needs
how was that training yesterday? Was
So
everybody part of that yesterday? She did a training on Thursday, not on Wednesday?
We did a Gator call.
Guys, this is what happens when you don't pay attention. You got to go into, how do you get the flowchart pace? Where is that available? It's available inside of the Kajabi. So we'll make sure that Carly puts that in there. So the flowchart, the contracts, the Zoom that they did yesterday, we'll make sure that Carly uploads everything because this obviously happened yesterday. I'm going to tell you guys right now, if this is something you're watching on YouTube or something that my team cuts and does whatever, this is such surface level information. The flowchart and how things work and the paperwork is, I can't even tell you how much I spent in contracts. The contracts alone on this are not just written by an attorney. They're written by an attorney that has handled these transactions over and over and over. We failed multiple times, and we had to fix the contracts where we failed. I haven't had to update these contracts in probably 6 months because there's been no issues. But it took a long time to perfect it. It took a long time to perfect the flow. It took a long time to find a Molly and a Jade and an Allison and Alyssa and all these people that know how to do these transactions to educate other transaction coordinators. The YouTube training is nothing. It's the YouTube training or the stuff that maybe you guys have seen out on YouTube is such surface level information. It's just there to tell you what exists and what opportunities there are, okay? So now, Jade, if I'm a Gator, I know that as a transaction coordinator, you don't necessarily care about this, but I want to point something out as a transaction coordinator. This is the biggest opportunity for them is that they're not following this. They're coming in and only lending the EMD. They're not taking any time to go and find the buyer and go and make another chunk of money.
Right.
So if you are the transaction coordinator or you're training transaction coordinators, I want you to make sure that you highlight that opportunity to the Gators and go, guys, don't forget, you should be double dipping on Gator 1.0. You should be putting the EMD in, JVing on the assignment fee, and also finding the buyer.
Absolutely.
Okay? Does everybody agree with that? Give me a yes. You understand that? I have 380 people in here. Give me a yes. Okay, so I see a lot of the common mistakes is that a lot of these Gators are not using their paperwork. And then they come back to me. There's a couple of things that happen. They don't vet the deal. They don't call the title company. They don't use the proper paperwork. They skip over the training. In fact, Alexis Morgan, I'm talking to you, Alexis Morgan. She skipped over all of the training, and she told Abraham Gray, she says, Pace, or Abraham, I've done all the training. Pace is missing this, this, and this. And Abraham comes back to me and goes, hey, can we have a sit-down meeting to talk about all the things I think you should add to Gator? I go, sure. They fly out from Atlanta. I'm not making this up. They sit right here in the studio, and we start talking about all the things that we are missing in Gator. And I pull up the laptop, I go, so you missed this 2-hour training that went through it and the paperwork that's attached? She goes, when did you add that? And I go, 14 months ago. And this goes on for an hour and a half. And Abraham's like, dude, we literally flew 3.5 hours
to have this
conversation when you could have just watched the training. And she's like, I got to tell you the truth. I only watched enough training so that I could go out and get a deal done.
Which I have to say is massive Gator mentality.
Massive Gator mentality.
Yes.
It's very much. So
yes.
I'm hoping
Give
that
me the bare minimum and I'm going to run with it.
Right. And then what they'll do is they'll go, oh, the training is it's like, dude, do you know how much training we've done? We've been training for 1.5 years. We have 5, 7, 8 Zooms a week. We have Jake Villarette 3 days a week. We have the transaction coordinators sometimes once, sometimes twice a week. We have Abraham Gray. We have me. We have PCS. We have all these trainings, and the Gators skip over all of it.
Yes.
And they go, I got a deal. And then they go, I lost $3,000. There's a possibility that people lose their money because they don't follow instructions.
Right. Or that they never get to the finish line.
Right.
Because they didn't know how to overcome the objections or the problems within the transaction.
I hired you. I brought you on the team, the dream team.
Love our dream team.
You are Scottie Pippen. So you'll see a lot of these problems pop up. And so I want you to make sure you have to reiterate. And I have to remind you that the Gators come in, and instead of, this is the craziest thing ever. I'm on a conversation, I'm in a Q&A a couple of weeks ago. And we have somebody comes in and he goes, man, I'm really struggling. I open escrow on these deals, and I've been struggling with this for 2 months. I open escrow, and then the deal falls apart. And I really, really wish I could just get a deal done. I'm like, okay. And basically, I find out he's not doing anything. I ask him a question. He goes, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I go, didn't you watch the training? He goes, oh, no, I haven't watched that yet. Oh, I haven't watched that yet. Oh, I haven't watched that. And this goes on for like 15, 20 minutes. I go, what do you do for a living, and how much money do you make? He tells me what he does for a living. He goes, I make $180,000 a year. I go, how long did it take for you to get to $180,000 a year in your job? He goes, well, I have a 6-year degree. I go, that's not what I asked. How long did it take for you to get to $180,000 a year? He goes, well, I got a 6-year degree. I go, that's not what I asked. But if we're stuck on the degree thing, let's have this conversation. After 6 years, how much money were you making at your job once you got hired? He goes, $90,000 a year. Cool. How long did it take for you to go from 90 to 180?
Right.
He says 10 years. I go, okay, so it took you 16 years to get to a point where you could make $180,000 a year, but you won't take 5 hours and watch the training that would have kept all your deals together.
Yep.
Guys, what is it about people that have access to training but just don't find it important? They go, oh, I got the paperwork, I got the thing, I'm gonna go get under contract. It's impatience, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So this is a common thing. I see a ton of successful deals. I just saw somebody posted in the Gator Facebook group, they'd done their 50th Gator deal this year,
Dang.
Which is awesome.
That's amazing.
Amazing. You know what they said? On the first 10, they did everything wrong.
That's how you learn.
I guess. Or you could just watch the training.
You could.
You could just watch the training. But what they said is I leveraged a transaction coordinator for my first 10 transactions. They did everything the right way. I didn't have to make any of the mistakes. They kind of walked me through it. So guys, my suggestion is work with top tier TCs to make sure that the TCs that are trained by Molly and Jade and Allison and all the other girls are actually doing things the right way. Okay. Do you know what Gator 2.0 is?
No.
Okay.
I'm waiting to learn today what Gator 2.0 is.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so you are going to learn something today.
Yes.
Have I taught you anything yet?
No, yes, absolutely.
I mean, besides the fact that I had to tell you where Gator came from and why it's important.
Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about this just real quick. I think it would be a bad thing if I talked about Gator wrestling and I didn't talk about some of the people I've done this with. Danny Gish, I've done a bunch of YouTube videos with her. Girl named Danny Gish. She's awesome. She's a Gator, and she's given me money before when I'm tapped out on money. And then I find out that Danny has never actually given me any of her money. It was another Gator she went to, and she split the fees. So guys, are we all aware that we should be working with each other and doing Gator deals together instead of just waiting for lines of credit?
Absolutely.
Okay, the lines of credit, how long do you think lines of credit will take for me to get to a substantial amount of money that I don't need anybody else's cash?
I would say at least 6 months, probably 18.
Love it. 6 to 18 months. It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
Right? I want to do $1 million deal. It's probably going to take me 18 months plus.
Absolutely.
Right? If I want to do a $10,000 deal, probably 3 months. Right? Do you know how I can get money off of a credit card?
Off of a credit card? Mm-hmm. No.
Plastique.com. So if I go to plastique.com, I can invoice my credit card company, pay the credit card, and get a $10,000 chunk of like a check. Okay, so yeah, it's pretty simple. Okay, so as we go and help people get lines of credit and credit cards through PCS, that's what people. It's one of the things that people get when they come into Gator. Okay, they get a coaching call every 2 weeks with a pro at corporate credit. They get coached along, and as long as we're in Gator and as long as Gator is going, there will be 2 calls a month for an indefinite amount of time. So if I'm a Gator and I have questions in 6 months about my line of credit or the new laws and the new regulations and the new tactics and strategies, and somebody on my team is in charge of building that corporate credit, Gator gives you access to somebody every 2 weeks and common practices and knowledge for forever.
That's great, because those things change.
They
all
do
the
change,
time.
right? And you're going to learn all that, which is great. You and I are going to start an LLC from scratch, and we're going to build corporate credit from scratch.
Perfect.
You down for that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Could Jeff do that?
Heck yeah, I could.
You think he could?
He's way smarter than me.
With their help, I could.
Boom! Okay, so leverage somebody smarter than you is what you're saying. I love it. Okay, so Danny Gish was really smart. And I basically told people, I said, guys, start Gator wrestling. Like, wrestle with each other's capital, wrestle each other's deals, help each other out. Let's build community in here. And Danny Gish was really good at this. She would give me money on my sub 2 deal. So as a buyer, I'd go, crap, somebody needs $10,000 earnest money. I'd call Danny. I go, do you have 10,000? She says, yes. She didn't have 10,000. She just went to a different Gator, got their 10,000, and she says, hey, Pace is going to pay us $5,000 for funding his EMD and getting his transaction done. He's out of capital. Then Danny Gish waits for the transaction to get over, and she goes, just so you know, none of that was my money. It's like, that's freaking great.
She's genius.
She's smart. Danny Gish. Give Danny Gish some love. So when you're training Gators, here's what I want you to watch out for. You're going to be doing a weekly Zoom with the Gators, and you're going to have to remind them all the time. It doesn't matter. Do you know like industry-wide how many people actually watch the training in any mentorship?
Oh, probably less than 10%.
It's like 13%.
Oh, wow.
13% of people actually complete the training. In Gator, it's like 40% of people complete the training,
Wow.
which is like 3 times more than the industry
That's
standard.
impressive.
But I always tell people, I go, I didn't build a mentorship. I built a community. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't like watching videos, then you should be linking with people that are doing deals.
Right.
Okay, so that's a big piece. It's like, hey, if you're going to skip the training, cool, that's up to you. But don't go do deals on your own. Go do deals with people that are proven, that are posting in the Facebook group. Mm-hmm. Now, here's another thing I want you to watch out for. The more successful our community becomes, sub 2, Gator, top tier TC, Astro, right? Those collective communities, what does that attract? It attracts a lot of amazing people, but it also attracts what?
A lot of negative attention.
A lot of negative attention from scammers, especially when money's flying left, right, and center.
Absolutely.
And people are funding 100 grand here, 100 grand there, et cetera. It's amazing to see how much money people are making, but it's really scary to see when people don't vet the person they're doing deals with. So I always tell people, hey, if you're going to fund somebody and you are, if it's iffy, I don't care if they're sub 2, they're Gator, they're top tier TC, or if they're my grandma. Don't trust anybody.
You need to vet the person, and you need to vet the title company.
And vet the deal.
That too.
Okay, so I
Obviously.
always tell people, if you want to make sure, like I just paid a company called TrustVerifyInvest.com. It's a girl named Melissa Palmer. She's going through and vetting all of my assets. She's verifying all of my ownership in companies. She's verifying my net worth. She's going through my tax returns, and she's going to make it public knowledge and go, this is if you want to do business with Pace, here's his scorecard.
Right.
So if you are doing business with somebody and you're wondering, are they tried, true, and tested, then say, hey, wholesaler, or hey, Gator, you're asking me a question on the TC Zoom if I should do this deal or not. I got to ask you, did you verify the person? Did you verify the title company? And did you verify the deal?
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. If somebody says to you, Jade, I have a deal, but I don't have money to fund the earnest money for this wholesaler yet, what are the 2 answers you should give to that person?
Connect with another Gator. Like
Okay.
Wrestle.
Gator wrestling, yep.
And
One that you don't know about,
one that I don't know about.
but you should know about. Okay, Pace and Abraham.com.
Oh, yeah. Like the Deal or No Deal.
Similar, right? So what I did for Gators, this is a bonus. This is after a year of watching how Gator works. I'm like, how do I improve this? How do I improve and expand the community so people that joined a year ago are still getting benefits a year later?
Absolutely.
Right? Have you ever joined a mentorship before?
Absolutely.
And they like have a 6-month time frame or a 12-month time frame? Gator doesn't have that.
They're in forever.
They're in forever and it continues to expand, much like Sub 2, right? So one of the things that we expanded on is I said, hey, I don't want to wait. If people don't want to Gator wrestle and people don't want to wait for their line of credit, which they should be working on, I'll just fund their deal with Pace and Abraham's money. So if you're a Gator and you need capital on a deal and you go, Jade, I have a deal, I need help with it, but I don't have the money, you go, did you go to paceandabraham.com? Because they'll fund your deal for you.
Right.
Okay? Who's doing the paperwork on all the paceandabraham.com deals?
I am.
Jade. Okay? So you'll also, most of the training you'll be doing, we'll be talking about those. And we're doing a ton of Gator 2.0 stuff right now. Okay? So what is Gator 2.0? Any clue?
Waiting to hear.
So what I did is I said, how can Gator 2.0 solve that problem? And what I did is I brought double close as a strategy to Gator 2.0. So it's our ability to double close. If I double close on a transaction, am I not the verified bona fide buyer?
You are the buyer.